Are you guys ready? Okay, I think we're ready to start. Welcome, everybody. I'm pretty sure I heard a teacher talking in the hallway last week saying, "Oh, I'm so tired." And the other one said, "Yeah, but at least we have PD on Friday," right? I know you guys are tired. I'm going to ask you to just dig deep and give me some enthusiasm and vigor today. We can do it for one more day. We have good stuff for you today. I'm so impressed by everything I've been seeing out in the schools and the work that you're doing. And what is most impressive is how happy everybody seems to be. And I've heard lots of good stories about kids reading. We've got kindergartners in this district that are already reading 20 minutes independently. So that is a great. And I've heard lots of good stories. Today we're really going to dive deep into a few things to help beef up what you're already doing. Our agenda, we're going to do some housekeeping stuff like just questions I've had over and over again. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk in depth this morning about the mini lesson. We're going to tear it apart and put it back together again. And this afternoon, we're going to talk about characteristics of text levels. Then we'll have some planning time at the end. Hopefully, we have an hour and 15 minutes planned, but we're going to really try to give you more than that. And lunch is from 11 to 12:15. Most important thing to know. Okay, stuff we need to talk about. Well, first of all, let's take a temperature check. Are you feeling like this today? You got it going on? You got your stuff going. You met with their parents. You've got those kids straightened out. You know these reading units. Or are you feeling like this? Little nervous. Thumbs up if that's you. Or are you feeling like this? You don't even know what you're doing. Or possibly, and I think this may be a lot of you today, you're feeling like this, little girl. Okay, I'm going to drag you. I'm going to be that person that's dragging you today. Okay? So, stuff we need to talk about. Wow, I can't see this board too well. So, I'm still having people say, "I'm sorry, you said there are unit slides already made." We have made slides for each grade level and each unit that follow the kind of the sequence of the unit. And what we tried to think about is helping you to plan. So not all the slides are for kids, but helping you to kind of sequence through. And some of them we tried to, the slides are, okay, this is what a teacher would probably want to project to her class. Okay? So we have those for Unit 1 about 1 o'clock today. Unit 2 will be posted in your Google Classroom for all of you. I hope, so there are slides to help you along. They may not be exactly what you want, but you can go to File, make a copy, and edit them for yourself however you want. The thing with the slides, though, that should not be happening is the teacher shouldn't be up here teaching from the slides. And you can use your, if you have a wireless mouse or you can get a clicker, you can still be down here with your kids using those slides behind you. Okay, we don't want it to be this kind of thing, because we don't do that anymore, really. Okay, so is everybody good with the slides? Okay. Where can I find that information? We have two main ways to communicate. We have the TOSA memo comes out every week. That should be being passed on to you. And we have the Springdale Literacy Academy Google Classroom. And I think you guys may all be in that now. Just the other day, we separated the Google Classroom into middle school and elementary. So you'll only get notifications from elementary, and we took a whole bunch of stuff out of there. But there's still a lot in there. Use the topics list on the left to help you find what's there. We try to organize them into everything into topics to help make things easier for you to find. And we're going to try to be really judicious about what we post on there so you're not overwhelmed. But you should get a notification every time something's posted in there so that you're kept up to date. So those are our two ways to communicate with you. We don't know a better way. So we're putting it out there, and so I'm encouraging you to keep up with that. There's a lot of good stuff. I know it's overwhelming. We're going to try to be better about what we post and make sure everything's really purposeful. Several people have asked me about writing curriculum. We have not adopted the Lucy Calkins writing curriculum yet. A few schools had kits sitting on their shelves and decided to try it along with this. That is not our recommendation, but you're certainly welcome to do that. We just think it's too much for you to learn the two programs. Some schools are doing empowering writers. That's okay. That's great. We have our Springdale writing curriculum that came from our units. And in the curriculum calendar, these are here, and we've revamped some of them. Third grade, we've separated that research, that Unit 2 information writing into two separate units. And we've looked at the Calkins unit to kind of guide us. So third grade, you may want to look at that. Fourth and fifth grade, we added a literary essay unit. That is very heavily borrowed from Calkins, but put in that old UBD format of the focus lesson, the guided group practice, the collaborative practice. They're the same for they're exactly the same for fourth and fifth grade because fifth grade really hasn't had that work yet. So I felt it was appropriate for them to do the fourth grade one. Those are suggested. These are suggested. Your writing right now is whatever's working for you. Those are the best scores we have in our district, our writing scores. That's what we're doing fairly well at. So whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You have several resources. If you're having issues with writing, let us know, and we'll try to help you. But these Springdale units are in here, and they've been a little bit cleaned up and revamped. Okay. The Google Classroom code is right here. You can only get in that Google Classroom if you are logged in to your SDale account. So if you're having trouble getting into it, make sure you're at your SDale account. Writing about reading. A lot of you have talked to me about this, about how you're not sure what's going on with writing about reading. You're not sure when to do it. The Post-it notes don't look good. And that's okay. We're going to get better at this. Hey, can you turn that TV on right there? That's kind of like my teleprompter. So there is a great chapter in your guidebook on writing about reading. And why I have this guidebook, let me say that I read this initially when we first decided to adopt. I read it again while I was in New York. And now that I've taught several lessons, I'm going back and reading chapters, and it's like reading a whole new book now that I have some background knowledge about the program. So I would suggest that you dive back into this. There is a really great chapter on writing about reading in here. It is chapter 10, and it has some pictures in it and some examples. It's really good. And I read this once already, but then after I taught lessons, this made so much more sense, and I picked up on so much more information. So I would suggest that maybe tonight you'd like to read this. This is a guideline. The kids shouldn't be using more than 10% of their reading time for writing about reading. Okay? And remember, every minute in which kids are writing about their reading is a minute when they're not reading. So you want to make sure that that writing is really purposeful. Is it such a potent force for good that it's worth giving up that reading time? So that's something to think about. We know that readers can think more deeply when they actually write their thoughts down. So writing about reading is a really good thing, but it has to be really purposeful. Anytime you're taking away reading time, you're doing a disservice to your kids. You should be doing independent reading time every single day. That is not the thing that gets cut when you have an assembly. That is one of the most powerful things of your day. So that should not be cut. Okay? Lucy posted on the Facebook page the other day, and by the way, I got a like from Lucy on one of my posts. Just want to let everybody know that. Somebody asked about the writing about reading, and this was her quote. I regret that notebook entry about Ringer in Book 1, Grade 5. I love that entry, but don't let it lead you to channel kids to spend all their reading time writing huge, long entries. And this was the entry she regrets putting in there. If you've seen this one about Ringer, okay? That we don't want them to do this big, long writing. Maybe once a week you might, after your kids get better, and maybe not this year. After they've had some good instruction and thinking, maybe you might have a small space in reading time where you do writing about reading, but not every day, certainly. Here are some ideas I saw on the Facebook page. Here is, you can't see these, you'll have to zoom into them on your laptops, but they've got a little anchor chart for stopping and jotting. And then I really like this, a 1-star jot, a 2-star jot, a 3-star jot, and a 4-star jot. And she has examples of student jots on there. So that may be something that might be helpful to your students as they reflect on what they're writing about. So a lot of our kids, I noticed, when we send them off from the carpet, and by the way, everybody should be having their kids at the gathering spot on the carpet. Even big kids, even 5th graders. There is something very, very powerful and magical about this, about being there with those kids. And it's movement in your classroom. I know that's been a big issue lately about how much movement are kids. So coming to the carpet, getting that lesson, and then going off. But one thing I've noticed is a lot of our kids, they don't seem like they know what they're supposed to do when they leave the carpet. It's not clear. A lot of you have expressed that to me. So I was thinking about, what about a jotting menu as they leave? So as my students leave, I might say, today we talked about blank. We also in the past few weeks have talked about this, we've talked about this, we've talked about this, and you would go slower than I'm going. Boys and girls, think in your head what you're going to work on today as a reader. Give them time to think. Now turn to your partner and tell your partner what you're going to work on today as a reader. And then you give this jotting menu. If you're going to do this, these are some frames for your jotting. If you're going to work on this today, these are some frames for your jotting. Do you get the idea? So my kids now have in their head, before they leave the carpet, what they're going to work on as a reader. And now, when I go to confer with children, I'm not going to say, how's it going, and hear a summary. I'm going to say, tell me what you're working on as a reader. And you can tell, and they will tell you something. You'll ask for evidence and you'll talk to them and you'll know right away, are they really doing that work or do they need coaching with that work? And there is your conference right there. I know a lot of you have talked about, I'm not sure what to conference about. There's your conference right there. And it also is very clear to the kids that they're expected to do some thinking work during that independent reading time. if you need resources for writing about reading. Very basic first steps might be appropriate for 3rd grade or struggling 4th or 5th grade, and you can find that in 2nd grade, Unit 1, Session 6, if you wanted to go back and kind of remediate that writing about reading. Also, the literary essay that I talked about for 4th and 5th grade, the first two lessons in that unit, thank you very much. The first 2 lessons in that unit are writing about reading. It's teaching kids how to notice details and write about their reading. A matter of fact, I put a little disclaimer in there that says these may seem like reading lessons, but they're going to get you to writing. And I think if you feel like you need to go back and teach your kids how to do more writing about reading, those first 2 lessons might be helpful to you. So you might want to look at those. Okay? And we're not working here. I am frozen. Okay. I think that's it. Okay, so any questions about writing about reading? It's not going to be very good at first. I mean, we have never asked kids to think like this. So don't get too stressed out about it, okay? It's baby steps, okay? We're not going to expect a kid to write War and Peace on a sticky note, okay? So just chill, okay? One other thing I wanted to talk about, 5th grade, Unit 2. When I was making the slides, I had a huge confusion, and I sent an email to Teachers College. In Session 1 in Unit 2, in the teaching point, it calls out an article called An Animal Like No Other. And so then you go to the Heinemann site, and you look at Session 1, and there it says Lessons from the Deep, Level 5. And then you've got all these amazing octopus articles that are never called out. Those are all the same thing. They just have 3 different names. So don't let that confuse you. Lessons from the Deep, Level 5 is this, Amazing Octopus, Level 5. Okay? An Animal Like No Other, Amazing Octopus, Level 5. Okay? It's a problem in the book that they haven't been called out properly. So as you're planning Unit 2, know that that's an issue. Okay? Any questions? Okay. So I think I've covered everything. Are there any questions about this stuff or any other things that you're wondering about in this stuff we need to know part? Anybody? You guys can ask questions and talk. You don't have anybody? Okay.
I love the menu idea.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's a scaffold. We don't want to tell a kid what to write or what to work on, because then that tells them there's only one thing that a reader does. There's lots of things that a reader does. We want them to choose what they're going to work on as a reader. We're going to guide them with our lessons and our anchor charts and stuff like that. But I like giving them a choice. That's a scaffold we may have to do this year and maybe next year. They need a lot of scaffolding. They haven't done this kind of work before. So give them a break. Give those little kids a break. Okay. Now we're getting into our topic for this morning, mini lesson mojo. So our purpose today is to deepen our understanding of mini lesson structure in order to write our own mini lessons. When you feel like your kids are struggling with a concept, you teach a mini lesson and you feel like your entire class, that just went right over their head, and you know that they need some more work, do not go to other curriculum to get that work. Don't revert back to your favorite lesson. You're going to stay in the workshop model, And you're going to write another mini lesson, plan another mini lesson in the workshop model to support them. Now, you're going to do all the sessions in every unit, but there's enough time, there's enough padding there. If you feel like kids, you need to tuck in a mini lesson here and there, or sometimes you'll notice that the teaching point is one thing and then the mid-workshop teach is almost a completely different thing. If you feel like that mid-workshop teach needs to be a mini lesson, then you can write a mini lesson and tuck it in there. Okay? But we're not going to go get our favorite graphic organizers about text structure, all that stuff that was good stuff, and we were doing the best we could do, but now we know better. We're always going to keep in the reading workshop model if we need to do more with our kids. Okay, so today you guys get to learn how to write mini lessons, and you're going to be writing mini lessons. So hopefully when you leave today, we'll have a bank of mini lessons that you're going to share with me that will be accessible to everyone in the district. And you'll have practice doing this because we want it to be right. We want it to do it in this good model. Okay. The content of the mini lesson will change, but the structure will stay the same. And your best resource for the mini lesson is Chapter 7 of your green book, of your Guide to the Reading Workshop. Okay? So we always are going to start our mini lesson, planning our mini lesson, with the teaching point. That's the thing that's going to drive everything else we do in the mini lesson, is the teaching point. And there's two parts to a teaching point. You're going to state the technique, the skill, and the strategy that you want kids to learn. And then you're going to tell the readers how they go about doing it. So that's two parts. State the skill, tell them how they're going to do it. Here's an example. Today I want to teach you that when you talk about a nonfiction book, it's really important not just to say, look, wow, huh, why, these are great starters. But above all, nonfiction readers need to explain what they have learned to others and share that learning. That's my teaching point. That's what I want them to know. This is how you do it. And to do that, it helps to use fancy words that go with the topic. So I've got what I'm going to teach them and a brief statement of how it's going to happen. I would like you to read this teaching point, turn and talk with someone close to you, and identify what is the skill or strategy that's being called out and what is the part that's telling them how to do it. And we'll do that. We'll spend like 30 seconds on that. Go ahead. Okay, what is our teaching point? Anybody want to call that out? What's our teaching point? Okay, today I want to teach you that a good argument has reasons to support it and evidence to back those reasons. Okay, that's our teaching point. That's our skill. When you analyze an argument, it helps to ask. We're telling them how to do that. What is the claim being made? What reasons support that claim? What's the evidence to support those reasons? Okay? Caution. These are assignments, not teaching points. Today, I want you to retell your book when you are finished. That's an assignment. Today, I want you to find the sight words in your book. That's an assignment. Okay? Those are not teaching points. Okay. The teaching point has to be transferable. It's a technique, a tip, a skill, or strategy that you will expect students to draw on repeatedly, perhaps today and certainly for the rest of their reading lives. So, and I've shared this before, back in ancient times when I first started teaching, I thought I was really doing something when I left the Basel and had my whole class read a novel. And every teaching thing I did was about that novel. And, you know, we dissected Island of the Blue Dolphins to death. But I'm not sure that everything we did would transfer to the next book they did. It was specific to that book. So we need to make sure that the teaching point is something they can use in the next book they're reading. So here's I have this little mini lesson planning template, and I start with the teaching point, and here's my teaching point. Today I want to teach you that a reader's initial theory about a character sometimes changes when they read on in a book, looking for examples and evidence to support their theory. So I've got what I'm going to do. I've got my teaching point is that our theories about characters change, and how we do that, we read on and look for evidence. Okay? So I asked you to bring some concepts, skills, or strategies that you felt your kids were having trouble with. So I want you can either work by yourself or work with your team. If you work individually, you'll have 4 or 5 mini lessons, but I know sometimes this hard thinking you want to work with a partner, so however you want to do that is fine with me. What I want you to do is think about one of those concept, skills, or strategies that your kids are not getting, and I want you're going to write a teaching point for that. This is the first step of planning a mini lesson. So you choose what your kids need to work on, and you're going to write a teaching point. So click on the link for this planning form. Go to File, make a copy. Don't type in that one. Make a copy. Name your copy in the following manner: school name, grade level, for example, Jones, 5th grade. Share your copy with me, and there's my email. So you're going to write a teaching point. Once you have your teaching point, I want you to find the grade level team from your partner school and share your work. So we've got Lee, 4th grade here, Jones, 4th grade right here. So once you guys have some teaching points, I want you to get together and share. We're going to take 15 minutes for this. Those of you at our satellite schools, be back with us in 15 minutes. If you have questions about the procedure, make sure to use the chat box. Is everybody clear what we're going to do? Think about what extra mini lesson you want to teach, and we're going to start the first step in writing a mini lesson by writing the teaching point. Okay? Let's get started.
Well, I worked on one last night before I knew this format, and it was for summary plans. So then, let me pull that up. See if how I did on my I think to reflect it all. Yes. Okay, so this is what I put. Well, let's not read it. Read it aloud. For the teach part? Yeah. And I started with, I did connection, so in my connection, so I want to teach you, so today I want to teach you how to write a summary. When a reader can summarize, it helps us to remember better than creating the story. Remember, you want to use chronological order and emphasize the biggest parts of the story tiger writing. We use big steps to summarize the story. And then I went into the teaching part, listen as I read Firefox. As I read, think about these questions. And that's the end, you know. But so I think in my connection,
Yeah, when you had a link, you kind of went back to what they read. So you started out strong. Go back to your writing.
so I said, so today, I want to teach you how to write a when a reader can summarize, it helps him or her better understand the story.
Okay, so now from there, how did you get how we're going to do it? That makes sense.
Model it after that, like teaching point or whatever, so from that little example or whatever, just say what she showed. Wasn't that helps students see what's important to make a summary.
Well, what you did was summarize. So when you summarize, you ask yourself. So
Yeah, you ask yourself.
whatever else you had
So
up.
somebody was here.
Yeah.
Somebody was here today. So was it not good to connect to that?
Well, not in your team, but
Not in my teaching.
in your link. Yeah, I don't think you do that in your teaching point. That's what you're going to want to do in your.
But I thought the links linked it to what you were going to do.
But it might, or that might be your connection.
Well, and this wasn't my connection.
Yeah.
Hey, I had a.
Yeah. So that's really your connection.
That's because it's the original one.
So you start out by saying, about
That would be my connection.
today, I want to teach you how to summarize. And to do that, we're going to connect it. So,
Who is it? Where you talking?
yeah.
How to write a summary or how to summarize.
Don't trip.
Right.
I think that's a good one.
Put that out myself.
It takes all of us. But if you're
So you're saying take this and just put it down here and leave this part here as our connection.
and then you want to put your how you're
Do it.
yeah.
Which is so when you summarize, you have to ask yourself that out. Who is the story about?
Like this one is readers, author, and
Okay, so last night I had finished this original, but here in my connection, I had a teaching point too. You know, I put a teaching point and a connection. I need to take that. This and leave it there, but this over here. But then I didn't really say to somebody.
It's for you. I mean, I actually want to share these out with you. And you don't have, I didn't, well, I mean, this is just so you have a conversation. You're still, we're not saying that to attach to that template.
No, I don't know.
You in your first learning area, how to make sure you get all this
Yeah, I think once you start writing these pieces, you won't feel like
Somebody. Everything was like that.
So this would be.
What happened. Oh, yeah, somebody. So what did the character, what did that character want?
That could be debated. To really analyze the character, to really share with you. About what the character wants.
But what did they do?
Their perspective. Okay, let's keep it. Maybe it's not really
What did they do?
So are you utilizing characters to create more?
That's harder than
Then.
There it is. And thank you for that.
So you cut maybe a box. After each question. But some are difficult.
I don't want to teach you that reader.
So remember your
analyze, add on,
And then we need to work all day.
That's exactly.
Well, if it's how about this? Let's say questions that spur debate. Debatable questions. Debatable questions.
And that might be like, say a strong topic question, but you're not starting to about this.
Analyze their
Yeah, this is very exposed to people.
Molly and Ellie. Yes, he is. Elio. Yes.
He's the bane of cars.
Not supposed to.
Yeah, that's where I'm going.
And so I think about when you're like you might have to read it. I mean, how many chapters and then you just read if you're having trouble coming up with that second part of the teaching point, think ahead a little bit to what you're going to demonstrate. And maybe briefly summarize that.
That's bad. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
But she has to end at 8.
Go.
you all have a teaching point?
Yes, we share
Part-time.
It helps to.
I watched it just a couple weeks ago.
It's such a good one. It's actually like when I was funny for everyone, but it's
and general idea.
Is this the demonstration? Where did it go?
Oh yeah. Once you have your teaching point, share.
Oh, so we
Forgot that part.
yeah, we share. Coming to us in the.
Once you have your teaching point, share with your grade level, with your partner school.
Hello, partners. Hi, fourth grade. We were
Welcome.
Where'd you get it? It's like an Etsy.
Tell Eddie. Hey, Eddie.
We have an You like these shirts? Go ahead.
Okay, I'll get on that. Thank you. I want one. Okay, so we picked two teachers. The first one was architecture, and the second one was yeah. Today I want to teach you that good readers support their ideas. When you have an idea, you must go back to your text and ask yourself, how do I know that? Or what made me think that? Very good. How do I know that? That's good. Okay, justify it. Yes. Okay, do you all write words today? We wrote two together. Okay, good. Second one. We want to figure out an unknown word. Today I want to teach you that good readers have a strong understanding of their original words and phrases and how to figure out when they analyze your character's that's a develop a big idea about who your character is. Good. I think we're both great.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's I mean, we did character traits, but it was in a broader. Yeah, right, yeah.
There's always that.
Okay, if we could reconvene back to. We had a question on the chat box about If you feel like you need to do more work with a concept, skill, or strategy, can you just keep the same teaching point but do some different demonstrations? Absolutely. No problem. No problem at all. Okay? So we've got our teaching point. I think we had some aha moments in this room about, oh, just knowing those two parts is going to help me with my delivery. I hope that satellite schools had some good conversations. Okay, so we've got our teaching point. We know what we want our kids to learn. Now we need to do the teaching part. And this lasts about 3 to 4 minutes. So once my transferable technique or strategy is clearly identified in the teaching point, you'll set students up with tasks that help them apply and practice that technique. So there are 4 main methods of teaching in this model. There's demonstration, guided practice, explain, example, and inquiry. And we're going to do a little activity now. You, at satellite schools, you have these envelopes. You have 6 of them, so we should have 6 groups. And inside you will see some headers that say demonstration, guided practice, explain, example, and inquiry. Get those all out. Set those headers up, and then with the people at your table, decide what there's descriptors. Decide what descriptors in your envelope go with those 4 headers. Am I clear as mud? Okay. We will take about 5 minutes to do this, so work fast. I answered that, I think.
Oh, you.
Or maybe example. This almost always happens with
I'm used to cooking.
Shoot.
I have undo the reading. I've already done it.
Start by pointing at your toe. Themselves doing our work. They are doing our work. Right. Has to read and figure it out. Yeah, that's inquiry. Invite readers would be gotcha. That guided. Let's put it in guided practice. What do you think? How do you think?
I have
Undo the reading
You can't get one on the other.
Well, not where I can see it on them.
Not me, I know one. Yeah, Breeze, mine's good.
People have lunch.
Did you know that?
No, I'm talking about
India, oh, India.
working
Well, but sometimes the cursor.
Okay, let's gather back and I'll show you the answers. Okay, so this should be one set that you have together. 90% of the mini lessons in the Calkins model are this. I have to undo the reading work I've already done so I can show my readers how to do the work. Invite readers to see themselves doing the work. Watch me and I'll show you how to put on your shoes. Okay, so I'm going to take my shoe off. I'm going to undo my work. Watch, I'm going to point my toes and I'm going to show kids how to do that work. That's demonstration. And 90% of the lessons in the Teacher's College model are demonstration. Okay, here's the next group that should be clumped together. This almost always happens in the active engagement. Kids are doing 95% of the work. After the model, now you try it. 2 to 3 minutes of trying the work. Start by pointing your toe. Good job. Now stick that pointed toe right into the shoe, all the way to the far end. What is it? Guided practice. Okay, good. Okay. More lecture style, illustrations, PowerPoints, kind of like what I'm doing to you today. Telling, not showing. Look at this method for putting on the shoes. What do you think, guys? Explain, example. Okay, good. All right, and so the last one you already know. Ask the reader to figure it out. How do you think I got this shoe on my foot? Figure it out. If we laid out a lot of shoes like these, what would be involved in getting those shoes on? What steps would be required to put on the shoes? You figure it out. Inquiry. There are a few inquiry lessons in the units of study. The gallery walks that you've done, where there are a few. Okay, so demonstration. This is 90% of mini lessons in units of study are demonstration. When you're doing a demonstration, you need to make sure you are not summarizing what you want the students to learn. Readers, I want to tell you how yesterday when I was reading this book, I realized I'd created an image of cysteine that actually wasn't borne out as I continued reading. That's kind of summarizing. That is not a demonstration, okay? When you demonstrate, you want to take that shoe off. You want to undo the reading work you have already done so that you can put your shoe on in front of the learners, okay? To demonstrate, I already need to have this theory about cysteine that I know will prove erroneous. So I know I've got it. I've already talked in the past with my kids about this character cysteine, and we've talked about a theory of her, and I know it's wrong, but then I'm going to demonstrate how I find out that it's wrong. So here's my first draft. Readers, you'll remember that yesterday we talked a bit about Sistine and how we could really picture her. Remember my teaching point that I'm modeling for you is that character sometimes changes and we have to read on? I know I picture her with that frilly pink dress and her name, Sistine, reminding me of the angels in the painting for which she is named. Remember that once readers have a theory of a character, we read on, we learn more about that character. We either say, yep, that fits, or we find that sometimes new parts of the story challenge our theory. Watch as I read and see if in the upcoming story, Sistine does prove to be a girly girl with a pink dress. So that's my first draft of my teaching. There's two fine details that make a big difference in your teaching. Kids will learn more if they see themselves doing what you're trying to do. And the teacher needs to be explicit about what they expect students to notice and do. So kids will learn more if they see themselves doing what I'm trying to do. When I was first married, I often would sit on a stool in the garage and watch my husband change the oil in the car. And we'd talk and he would work. And, you know, that's kind of like what newlyweds do. You know, I wouldn't do that now. So it happened that my husband had to go out of town to work on a job, and he was gone for about 6 weeks. And while he was gone, the little light came on in my car that said I needed to change the oil. So I called him and I said, who should I take the car to change the oil? And there was a long pause, and he said, well, Linda, you've been watching me change that oil all this time. I'm sure you can do that for yourself. But I never, ever watched him as a person who was going to do that work. He never invited me into that work. He just did his thing. He thought I was watching. I thought he wanted me out there just to keep him company. Sorry, I just patted my mic. Sorry, people out. What really, he was trying to set me up in case he couldn't be there, that I could take care of myself, which is a really loving thing to do. I just missed the whole point. I never, ever saw myself as a person who would change the oil in a car. And I can tell you, I never have seen myself as that person. And I never will see myself as that person. But I needed to be, if he had invited me into that work, my mind would have shifted, and I would have thought about, oh, I'm supposed to be learning how to change oil in a car. So here's my second draft. Okay, I started out that the first draft was okay, but now I'm adding in phrases like this. Readers, let's remember for a second what we know about Sistine. Look at, let's remember, not I'm going to, let's remember. And then I'm going to leave a tiny space for them to think. I'm thinking about that pink dress. Her name, Sistine, like the painting with the angels on it. I'm trying to crystallize my sense of what she's like. What are you thinking? I'm inviting those readers in. Leave a tiny space for them to think. To me, she seems like a girly girl type, sort of feminine, blah, blah, blah. Remember that once readers have a theory in mind of a character, then we read on. That support our theory. Let's look at all these. Let's all of us listen. Are you ready to do that thinking? Those are small little phrases, but we're communicating to the kids that they are doing this work as well. And then the next point is the teacher needs to be explicit about what they expect students to notice and do. So here's my third draft. And look at the language I've added here. Readers, I want to remind you that it helps to pause as we're reading to think. Usually I find the author tells me details, but I need to come up with words for what the person's like. So those are explicit things I want the kids to notice and do. Okay, for this then would be my final draft. And I put these in the slide for you to look over and see the difference between the three drafts. And that's what's really going to make that teaching point precise. Okay, so that teach precise. So next step, I've added my teach to the chart, and I've put some resources I might need. So guess what's coming, kids? Now I want you already wrote your teaching point. I want you to create your demonstration. We're going to just focus on demonstration today, since that's 90% of what's in our lessons. What text will you demonstrate with? How are you going to take off your shoe for your students? Don't forget to leave yourself some time to meet with your grade level, your partner school grade level, and share your ideas. I said 20 minutes here, but you guys kind of knocked out that teaching point. So let's do this in 15 minutes. So satellite schools will resume back here. Well, no, let's go ahead and do 20 minutes.
I know one school had needed a little extra time to finish the test.
Okay, we'll go ahead and take the 20 minutes. And then also if you need to, pull your happiness wagon, which actually means go to the bathroom, go ahead and do that in that 20 minutes, okay? So we'll resume back at 9:20. Once you buy it one time, you can't stop. You have to go on a
I like that. Some margaritas.
It's a good day for that.
It's a good day. Not till after work.
Right, a good evening.
When I'm there,
Oh, you can do that.
well, then that was before they had all those laws. But on Friday, we went to
When I was in high school, that's some smoking very
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, until my brother got
Oh.
He also got expelled.
Yeah, that Friday afternoon plan. It was awesome.
I wish we could do that.
No, there were no kids.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so are you ready to roll on this part? What can I help you?
I guess you can type. Holly's computer is in there. Someone wants to type.
Okay.
In the teach demonstration part.
Hold on, let me pull up what you sent me.
I've got it pulled up.
Okay, okay. I didn't have it.
Yeah. Where this is like quoted, right?
Okay, so
We're writing it.
Yes.
it's all great.
I mean, I just was really fireflies.
He was very helpful.
And then ask yourself questions as you read. So I had to come up with good ideas.
So we can come up with.
Yes, I don't have any good verbiage.
Okay.
So we're just going to fluff it a little bit.
What's the part that you have? Start out with.
Yeah, that's what I want.
One or mine.
How does it yes right?
Or to ask yourself.
Do we want to connect it first though? Like if we're teaching.
She hasn't gone to the connect. You mean like the very first box?
Well, I'm just thinking if we're saying like, what story are you summarizing?
Well, I was going to start with I'm going back to print.
If I need to read that, is it in here? I can read it really quick.
No, it's not in there. I just.
It's been a while since I read Fireflies.
Yeah, I know. I actually know. What's your good book for something? So, I don't know. We can change it.
No,
Right. I always brought summary like super scaled back before my teaching work was always like Goldilocks and the Three Bears or not Goldilocks. Are we Goldilocks? No.
they don't know.
Whatever.
Later as we read on, talking about kids were going, wait a minute.
Well, they did. Yeah, we did. First few chapters, set aside chronological reason.
I know, that's the part that we have to find that part.
So I could say, let's remember how we, remember what we looked at first chapter, or when we went
So can we reference the back to the first chapter?
Yeah, but it wasn't exactly the first chapter. I think that was good.
first chapter.
We had a discussion at the table that I think is really pertinent. Your purpose, keep in mind your purpose is the bulk of your class did not understand or isn't engaging well with this concept, skill, or strategy. Most of your class, not a few kids, most of your class. So you're going to write a mini lesson to help make sense to that child. You can still use your same mentor text. Like if you're in 3rd grade and you're using Stone Fox, you're in 5th grade using Home of the Brave, you're in 4th grade using Tiger Rising, you can still use that mentor text. Use a different excerpt. Find an excerpt that works for this. Or maybe it's appropriate that you bring in a different text. That's what you have to decide as a teacher to help convey this concept, skill, or strategy. And remember, the mini lesson is not for mastery. When you decide to write your own mini lesson, you're deciding that like 90% of my class doesn't get this. If I only have like 5 or 6 students that don't get it, that's small group instruction. Okay, are we clear on that? Okay.
Okay, so what's next?
I may have to take that whole thing and we go back on.
So do we just make a different character?
The kids really say that at least for one, that's the way you as Oliver. Yeah. And I don't want to be too hard. I think that was really the only because they were like, there was a tiger go and then
If you need mentor text, I've got extra tips in the back.
they couldn't remember really the whole purpose of how it runs. Yeah, like to summarize and say, how even with the character development. How the story and how the story ended of Tiger dying, they don't remember how all of that and families at the end of the tiger was shot.
Okay, so what's the
So, but, okay, so when you say that, this is what I would think that they would do. You get up there and somebody draws on it. But, okay, so you got the keys. So you have to have the other guys. So is that an appropriate summary?
Because it only talks about one person to be used and someone
flat out or whatever?
that was really the only chapter I felt like like when
No, when I read it last year, they were like, I think
At the end of every chapter.
we're gonna read another one? What happened? What happened to the tiger? What happened to the tiger? Are they gonna let the tiger go?
I know, right?
Good, so that's why it's like, and I mean, it isn't. They can't fix what they did. really, saying like strategy, they step back when you're reading the first.
And you're back to everybody.
But
He's got the anger.
I mean, so is this an inappropriate strategy?
No, I think it's a good strategy. But it's applying, I mean, like what we have to remember, we're teachers of strategy. That is not that they can take back whatever they're reading at their desk and read it. So,
We would have to think about how they can do that, like I'm thinking of voice, what if I can't do it?
Yeah, and then so, and then we bring them, you know, we invite them to our things. And we're all thinking about it together.
So our question is, like, I'm going back now after adding to read. Prior. Stop. So do we use this text to work more with conversation? Different text? So is a somebody line like so then? Because you're getting, you know, somebody robbed, but you're missing the other characters. You're missing the fact that he has, you know, feelings.
Maybe your demonstrations with Bob or Christine and your active engagement is another thing. That's what I did. I'm using Christine because she's a little bit harder, I think. I was using hard one for my demonstration, and then they're going to do active engagement with Ross.
Oh.
That makes sense.
I like that.
So you tell them you rob after you've demonstrated what you
Demonstrate to somebody wanted to.
There's always questions, you know, all the way up to stuff that you're writing.
that makes sense.
Well, I mean, just line that up.
Okay, so write that down.
Okay. Readers, I want to remind you how important it is to ask yourself questions when you're reading. As we think about, yeah.
Let's remember
The story.
Sorry.
somebody wanted that so
Have you noticed something? There's that one, and then there's more of that.
I remember in the story, the teacher and think about remembering the story.
About
It can't just be
perspective. Summarize the story. Summarize the story.
Let's think about this Christine's perspective.
why don't we say let's remember categorizing
Her eye, how the story played out.
yes, and use the somebody wanted that so then summarize it from 16
Perspective and summarize how she
The events of the story.
yeah.
Say the major events of the story. Set for just the events of the story. Where she was in.
Yeah, I like that too.
You know, when I did summer focus and summary my first year, I did Watson's Go to Birmingham, and every chapter they had to write a summary of what happened, and it was easy to focus the narrator. Kenny was the Let's remember to be the right
And they felt like they thought they were kids.
which was like I had one very honored listener. I think I want to
Okay, so let's remember the HAR-BER. So, what so maybe I want to do like who's the story, like lead with lead with the question.
Okay, the same wording that you had.
Maybe. Who is the somebody? You know.
That's fine. Who is somebody?
Yeah.
No, it's not really about her.
No, it's not really about her. This is
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we need to reword that question.
Who's the somebody?
somebody. This is what somebody. This is an answer basically. Yeah. And then what is she? Let the tiger go. It is. Hallelujah. And then the problem is the tiger's locked in the cage.
But, yeah.
But we're also back to
So
This is what they're all talking about, that he has to have. But they're actually talking about this. This is the work. This is and I understand what you're saying.
how did they solve the problem with that?
Christine talks to Rob and Delaney talk about
So, I was not expecting that to end that way, just so you know. It was refreshing.
I cry when he's letting the speed out. Yes, I used to use that, like, literally, like, I can hear out, and I choked up. Like, her face changed.
Oh, I already said what happened.
sorry, I didn't realize that.
You're fine.
So his wants are, he wants to be sure.
What happened?
And then the story just kind of ends, like after.
The sun comes out early, but and then it goes back and it references the beginning of the felt like the star was reborn. And so he did make a friend, and he did let his feelings out, so we were assuming that his rash will go away. Okay, so do we need more on that? Let's look at her.
No. Teach and demonstrate them.
Should we do like this when they say on here that once readers have a theme or something, remember as we read, there's growing more characters. Yeah, for social.
We barely got that.
I know. That's what I'm like.
She's drafted it 2 more times.
Yes. So after that, Jenna, let's do like a remember, come down there, remember.
How do you want to start thinking about sharing with your grade level partners?
As we read. we can think about these questions from other characters' perspectives. In order to
Okay, satellite schools, I hope you're doing okay on time. We've got about 2 minutes for this section. I'm thinking that your team should be sharing together now. If you're having trouble with time, let me know.
My dog with me, so he'll need those.
Okay, Molly, see, what do we need to add?
So we just got done thinking about it, since I want to debate this now, we can also debate what makes them lose hope. So that way y'all can understand
Okay, yeah, maybe we didn't have that. What, are you ready to do that? We're ready to try. Yes, practice, you know, we'll do that this year. Are you ready to practice? Yeah, practice. And should I say now we're going to do, I mean, should before that say now you are going.
Are you guys going to share?
Try, that was wrong, you know? No, we are going. It's good stretching. Maybe, yeah, there, yeah. Good. We're cleaning it up. Now you're going to use this strategy or technique.
Well, you know, in a struggle,
From Rob's perspective, yes.
I think we need to come back together. I know, sir, you aren't quite finished yet. So if you want to get to our planning time, we need to move on. If I could have everybody back together. You guys ready?
We're ready.
Okay.
Yes, I know.
Okay, so now we've done our teaching point. We have done our teach. And the next thing we have to do is active engagement. This is where you give students a chance to try out their new learning. Okay? This is the time when you say to your kids, now you try it. This lasts about 3 to 4 minutes. The teacher provides support, but the kids are doing 95% of the work. So, principles to guide the active engagement. 2 or 3 minutes. Students practice what you taught. All students are engaged. Avoid having the whole class think together and then calling on a few students. Partners or triads work best. Set students up for success. So what does that look like, setting them up for success? Also known as scaffolding. Carefully select a shared text. So in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, you've been reading the mentor text out loud during read aloud. So then it becomes a known text when they're ready to work with it in the active engagement. So it works best if you have a shared text that they've already heard. Okay? One way to scaffold is if you have one of your groups of kids that you know is really getting it, come work up at the chart on chart paper while the other kids are working. And if you have a group that's partners that are struggling, you may want to pre-teach this to them secretly and then send them up to the chart and give them a little boost to their morale. Call out or post brief prompts. You might say, hey, you know, this is a frame you could use. I used to think Rob was blank, but now I'm realizing he is blank. Voiceover reminders. When they're working with their partners, you might just be walking around with little reminders and little tips. If you're looking for one word to sum up a whole character, you might try using more than one word. Usually people are too complicated to be shoehorned into one word. So during the active engagement, you set them up. You may have given them some sentence frames. They're working and you're moving around, giving little tips, but not doing the work for them. The active engagement ends with a debrief by the teacher in which he reminds students they are now capable of doing this in independent work. This is work that applies to another day and another text. Remember that transferable part. Look back at the teaching point and use those words again. We want the teaching point to stick. And one way to do this is making the key words of the teaching point into almost like a mantra during the whole mini lesson. Okay, so here's the active engagement. Readers, now it's your turn to try this work. Let's think about Rob. And this is a question we talked with fourth grade at Lee. They're like, well, we already used this mentor text. But notice the way I use the mentor text. I modeled with Sistine. I used the same mentor text, and now they're doing the work with Rob. So that could help, because you really want to keep with the same mentor text, although it's okay to use a different text if it's appropriate. But using the same shared text is better. Okay. Yesterday we talked about how Rob was sort of a timid kid, right? Remember how he let the bullies pick on him and he didn't protest? So let's do what readers do and carry our theory of Rob with us, like it's a football tucked under our arm. And let's read on. Remember, we are going to see if we find more stuff that helps us add onto our theory of Rob, or if we end up saying, huh, and changing our minds, as we did with Sistine. So then the teacher's going to read aloud. This is my plan. I'm going to read aloud pages 19 to 20, and then I'm going to ask my students, readers, turn and talk with your partner. Does this fit with your idea of Rob as a scaredy cat? And of course, I've planned it that it's not going to fit. Repeat a few conversations you overhear to the whole class. Possible frames. I've put some frames in for myself as I'm planning, and I may have these posted. Today you learned that a reader's first theory about a character sometimes changes when they read on in a book, looking for examples and evidence to, I don't know if I finished that screenshot, but you get the idea. So again, you're going to try now. This is your active engagement. This is where the kids are going to do the work. So keeping that teaching point in mind. Keeping in mind what you just taught them. Don't ask them to do something you haven't demonstrated. Okay, what text will your students interact with? How will you scaffold so that all students are successful? Let's take 20 minutes to do this active engagement. We'll come back about 9:50. So if you need a little break in there, take a break. We'll return at 9:50, okay?
So, should we move that, or do you just read? So, you know what I'm saying, or just leave it and then say read everything out your time, they turn to end or strategy.
Let's think about. Yeah, this is mine there. Yeah.
Turn to your partner.
Are we gonna go back to the text? Are we going to revisit any, or are we just gonna have them think about it? Is there a part we want to be not to go back?
Oh, I was thinking this was the example that was
So, yeah, okay.
they know that.
Do we want to give them any sentence or any, we want a poster with it?
Yes.
Or is there somebody wanted us to
Reference having that chart.
Yeah.
But over in your materials here.
Yes.
We could make it format to chart together to fill it out.
To fill it out. But a lot of times they want to see talk.
It's talking instead of, this is still on the, this is still on the.
Yeah, so they're still talking.
They're taught, we want to put it in the talk.
Turn to your partner. And answer the question.
Right, if we had this much time.
But here's my question for you.
So, yeah, answer the questions of this. Answer the
Great, thanks guys.
So how does he solve?
Summarize it like that. Use the, I'm gonna add, use the chart.
Just like on United
We all would.
read through it and look at it and say, okay, what do I, where am I what's my teaching and how, that's what I'm thinking about. What can I do about it? That's what they're
Another time you did the lesson.
that would have been much better.
We wrote that on our.
Did you pick the corner?
Yeah, that's right.
Kids, I mean.
We can work for me, but is it not wordy enough? Like how many?
I don't know.
Yeah.
To do it, and you guys have to watch
So they're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And then she every day, and then she has a little blurb that she has to read her first season. The character sometimes changes. They would learn how to read
At the bottom, at the link or in the?
That's the bottom. How to make a summary based on
We have to read your book.
Stop and jump.
This thing, this
you could learn that as you read stories, you're
Yeah, you're thinking about the part
But you're also not read it prior, and typically less than once you've read it.
Yeah, this is not, yeah, they're definitely breaking that.
As you're reading today, think about something on it that's in that you want to be able to summarize.
But I like how she was also kind of saying
Where we're striving.
That was always the thing about this.
the beginning, middle, and end. Yeah, as you summarize the story, there's the beginning, middle, and end. Well, I need y'all to help me write lessons.
I would help anytime.
I love reading.
I love the book. I used to do all the lesson plans going through. Because
Because you don't sleep.
and then I would get everything ready.
Oh my gosh, you would have been a green partner doing everybody's work.
I would get everything.
See, I take it home, but every night and day, but I like to work every day.
But see, I would like when my kids would sleep, could you debate sleep like this? Maybe something to do, could you debate it?
But I mean, this whole, like, the life they went into their plan and it only takes like, there's nothing about this.
We have to be really thoughtful.
I did sing in it. But then the last night I was and I was doing my first speech because I didn't know about it.
I was there for day one. You had to go around and that would be great. That would be very a lot of work and discipline to make sure everything was aligned and everything. So I had to go and number the room because when I did them, they go around the rooms reading them. And make sure they had everything named, they wouldn't have had an opportunity to go around.
I mean, that's
I mean, she already said so we're like Tell her we're gonna give her
Oh, I thought I did. I did. Okay. Yes. Okay. Just make sure you're informed. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. If you didn't get it, I didn't get my parents or parents. I'll bring it in. Okay. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Let me walk in a minute. Oh no. Kelly, I got it.
I sent her a piece of the last page. I said she takes their
Oh yes, look, there's me leaning and talking to you. I gotta lean back out. Thank goodness this is big Facebook. Here it is.
The Google Class. Wait,
Oh, there you go, you're waiting.
I said, Holly said she'll leave.
right here. The Google Class.
You're on there. Yeah, it's up on me.
Unfortunately,
I got our slides.
Did y'all find it?
Okay, I'm gonna wait.
No, that's not long enough.
Long enough that we know.
I liked it. I did it from where we
Like there's
You just do a big drink. And then I'll lean in real quick. Yeah. Well, it's not, it's wordy like. Right, I feel like I don't get up there and talk. So
And really and truly, she's written this for the ideal class. Yeah.
Because that's one of the things like what kind of schools
After it was published.
No, when they were writing, when they were going through the writing process, they've been working on this for 20 years. Yeah. Go in and teach them, after writing, yeah. So, and they're like, we saw them in school.
It seems like some of her like this.
She's very high level.
Yes, yeah.
I would just say,
Yeah, like in the one part where it was like connect to it, talk about it, she was like,
yeah. And do you want it?
I replaced it with something.
Yeah.
I think I made like a calculator.
Yeah.
Yeah. This just gives you a lens to how it might look. And
She's like,
I've been trying to do that, like tell stories, like the origin story. I'm like, okay, who's the my story? Like, you know, what's her story? And she just loves it, but she's excited, like you can tell with her stuff.
but I feel that way about you. Like, you tell a story about teaching. I'm like this because that's how I feel.
Like the whole time I'm like, this is
No, it's been a good one. But this is what we need. This is very helpful.
I felt like tearing it apart and putting it back together.
And you break it down for R.
And kind of the right time.
Yes.
Because you taught.
Well, I feel like I should have all my lessons like
But I don't know. I don't know about reading. Can you just write it?
You haven't heard of it?
I like it. I love it. Which is bad. I like it.
That's why it's
Are your kids loving together?
I used to use such a good which is the standard.
Whenever I see it,
It really would be various things. And it might be 20 I might have been
well, yeah.
Okay, it's time for us to gather back together. So you've written a teaching point. You have done your you've written a demonstration lesson. You've done your active engagement. So next comes the link. Okay, and the purpose of the link is to increase the student's sense of agency. Remind students of what you just taught. You can't say that enough. You cannot say it enough. Invite students to make smart choices about the work they will pursue during independent reading. This is where that think of what you're going to work on today, tell your partner, and off you go, works really well. This should last about 1 to 2 minutes. And so often at this point, the teaching point gets added to the class chart that you're compiling, your anchor charts. This is where you want to put that sticky note or reveal that and say, okay, remember, we've learned this, this, and this. Now today we get to add to our anchor chart. You might also recall the other things you've been teaching that you hope students might choose to work on today, gesturing to the same chart. You might say things like, so readers, you've been learning so many things about it, what it means not only to read stories, but to read characters. You've learned to do blank. And today, I hope you will have learned to do blank. Today, as you read, I'll be dying to see you do all these things. So I'm setting them up, then I'm going to be coming around and checking on them. Sometimes you'll add instructions. If you do this work, would you bring it to your partner talks later? I'm going to ask you all to start today off by doing this for just blank minutes, and then you can continue blank. You'll see I've put some purple Post-it notes on your table. If you do this sort of thinking today, would you leave a purple Post-it there so we can find that place easily when I come around to talk with you or come around to talk with your partner? That's a good strategy. So here's the link that goes with this lesson I've been developing. Readers, from this day on, whenever you are reading a novel, you've developed a theory. You develop a theory about a character. Remember that your theory is tentative. It's your best guess. As you read on, you will learn more stuff about the character, and you'll say, yep, I was right, or huh, that makes no sense. When you have a theory about your character, but he or she doesn't act according to your theory, remember, you can rethink, asking, might I need to revise my theory? So I've pretty much restated everything we've done so far. So I'm going to add to the existing anchor chart. I'm going to have students mark a spot in their book with a sticky note when their theory about the character changes, and then I'm going to send them off. So guess what's coming next? You're going to write a link. You might want to review what you've done so far. How are you going to restate all the work you've done in these last few minutes, and how are you going to send them off from the carpet? This is where having those kids at the carpet is so powerful. They're gathering in for that mini lesson. They're teaching. You've invited them in. You're close. And then it's symbolic. You're sending them off to do that work, and they're doing it independently. So if you are not having kids gather at the carpet, you need to start doing that. It's very, very important. We're going to take 10 minutes to do this link. Okay, so satellite schools will be back on at, I can't read the clock, 10:05. Thank you. Okay, get to work. Off you go.
Oh, no, put it at the top. Put it at the top. Like where we had to read on your own. Yeah.
Because we were trying to get
I have the same as you. Amanda's like whenever
Well, we're on
just get started.
Yeah. Summarize. Yeah. Then we go into think about somebody.
is what we did.
Yeah, delete that and then think about. Yeah. There you go. And then I also want to do like she's saying, write it on, as you're reading today, stop and jot. As you're asking yourself those questions, stop and jot.
Yeah, and you need to have stop and jot.
They're not writing long cards, they're jotting.
Jot, who is somebody? Jot down, who is somebody? Jot down, what does she? Use those sentences or those phrases.
Right now we're just trying to sticking with them. I mean, I do not later on. Because they're struggling right now.
But when is she gonna play that? And then if they leave tonight,
That's what
I think the connection is usually the easiest.
why are we doing that? It feels like you're just.
I like how we added that.
Materials. What did she call that word? Stop and just read on.
Here's a menu.
Menu.
Stop and jot.
Yeah.
Sorry, George.
What is the problem?
Yeah, that was slide 6. Yeah.
Somewhere between slide 12.
Slide 12 is 10. Slide 10 was same thing. Yeah, what is the character? Stop and jot. What is the problem? Stop and jot. But how is the problem solved?
I don't know if this is like the NGCD. We used to have to do like the swab that and stuff like when they were doing
That's what I would say. Put the S and then
because they can write that accurately before they start reading it, so it just tells their job.
yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
past your 1 year. I never thought it should be.
You have to read it. Are you sure? Actually, I'm on it.
Most of the time Sierra is not Sierra. I mean, Serenity, it's like Serenity. This most of the time Serenity because Serenity is what it's like. Pay attention. Pay attention.
You do hand movements, you just pay attention.
Yeah, I always do it, but normally I have to like redirect her to look at me, and then and that's what that. And she looks.
That's like. And on the cartridge,
Yeah, it's after.
With her hair over.
There's nothing to distract you. I mean, yeah, it's really.
probably would.
I take this seriously. I can't say the word. Because they do. Every time you say the word, it doesn't matter what the context is.
It is. You're correct. You're correct. That's hilarious.
I was like, this isn't some kind of serious thing. Yeah, I was like, we're not married. Especially after that whole thing.
I called it. Please don't kill anybody, but
I just take it. I like how they don't even fight it. They take pictures.
it's like, oh.
Even Elijah, I took one from pictures.
He asked for it back.
But he said, oh, I just found it. It wasn't.
Oh, no, you told me. Yeah.
And that's when I read it. That was the end of class. He asked for it back. And I forgot I even read it. But I told him.
Right, you sometimes ask grab it and put it on.
Yeah. I had it in my pocket and I didn't even think about it. And he asked me if he did have it.
And Karen, something was going on.
All he had noticed.
No, they sat, like, she was here, she was here. Like, she was grabbing and pulling and flexing and all over him.
Okay, let's gather back. Okay, we've done our teaching point. We've done our demonstration lesson. We've done our active engagement. We've done our link. So now we're going to go back to the beginning of our mini lesson and think about connection. And so the purpose of the connection is to put the lesson in context for the kids. And this can usually be done in 3 ways. Connect to previous learning, recruit students to recall what they've already learned. I taught a lesson in 5th grade where it was about narrator and point of view. So I just brought in some charts about, remember you learned the narrator is the person who tells the story, remember, just refresh about what they've already learned. You can show student work maybe as a connection or tell a story. Avoid launching the mini lesson with questions. Okay, this is not the place for those high order level questioning techniques because that will swamp your mini lesson. Once you start asking questions, first of all, you ask a question, one kid raises their hand. You and that one kid are the only ones that are engaged. Nobody else is. Then they start asking all kinds of questions, and pretty soon your lesson is swamped. And you're way past your 10 minutes, your 10 to 12 minutes. So avoid launching with questions. Okay, so this is my connection. And for my connection, remember the teaching point is characters change. So I just told a little story about seeing a teacher at a restaurant in 5th grade and how that wasn't the same teacher I saw in my classroom. Okay? So we saved the connection for last because, of course, once you have all your other stuff done, it makes the connection easier to do. Let me click on this sample mini lesson template because I don't know what's in there. I can't remember what I put in there. Okay, this is the whole thing. Okay. Yeah, this is the whole thing that I've done. Okay, so guess what's going to happen now? You're going to write your connection. We'll take 10 minutes to do this connection. This is the place, if your mini lesson is running too long, you could shorten it here. It doesn't have to be too wordy. So look at what you've written so far and start thinking about time and how short or how long your connection should be. Okay, we will resume at 10:20.
So I wanna go back and say, I think I had it stated as a question, do you remember? So I just wanna say, remember when we were reading we use chronological and synthesizing to detail parts of the first thing is the connection.
Cause you'd already done that.
Yeah, we had used big. Yeah, we actually walked across the room. Well, we used chronological order of retelling to retell the first six chapters, describing big.
You have it in some chart or something, so maybe you can reference or show that. Read your
I just didn't know it.
Look back.
Yeah, walk across the room.
To retell the events of the first 6 chapters of the novel, we use steps
I think I do.
to highlight each important part of the story.
So you said you had an X chart.
So like 8.
We tried to see it. What'd you put it?
12. I probably will just.
What was your
Really work careful. I'm gonna add
From retelling or summary.
from what?
Retelling or summary.
I'm blind. Oh, no, I can see it. Summarize.
Oh, well, the things that
It did say summary, yeah. But I probably read it like.
saying we were careful to make sure that each event was reviewed in the correct order that should happen in the novel.
yes, I love it, yeah, put that in.
I want to have a fun one. It'd be nice to add a point. Like how good readers are careful to whatever it is that I want to say. My words are all jumbled up right now. Just want to make a statement how important it is to know real order.
Yeah, like the chronological
Comprehend and understand the story.
Yeah.
That's probably good. Is that, you want to see that?
Yeah, but they said it different.
Very good, I like that too. And then we go into.
They were, well, they were Yes.
And then I also, yeah, but then I also took time because I knew that I don't know, I took one past my color pasting.
He and I were going to that apartment complex where Liberty lives. She wasn't on the list. They were already meeting for it was really funny. We didn't know her. Yeah, we recommended her. But she followed us from like, did you give her one? Yeah. She like went inside of her and then one of us was like, right. And give it to her.
It sounds good to me.
But she wasn't on our list. And she was really communist and we were asking her questions. She was like like nodding. She wasn't.
Yeah, she won't just be.
But then she just lost.
She went in her house and then knocked on her door.
Then when we got to her door, she
Went in Fair Stars, and then readers that got her
yeah.
No, it's just funny.
Walking away.
Session 12, great. She went like this, she was sitting on the carpet, and she's like, just face down, like, and it was reading time, so I had
It really is. This is what
Yeah, I love
but I also added in, do you feel like we're in a honestly, go stay in a spot where you can stay awake to read. Yeah. I was like,
there wasn't a note.
yeah, without falling asleep, playing with my
Because I can get used to it.
I would love to.
They understand that I'm teaching at it, but like more knowledge was sitting there like I don't know what it was. What do you do? She wrote on her whiteboard, she's signing who did that knowledge? Why extension for? Because then everyone is It's weird. I really like it.
But they're not, so
Part of what we do. It's hard because do you find that when you're constantly working this year, whenever it's at a different pace in the lesson?
Oh, yeah.
Like it's
And then
like
it's like, what do I do next? What do I do next?
I just keep trying to have a base back to the profile and then clicking on the assignments.
Yes. But I got mixed up.
Let's all come back together.
Okay, I was too. I when I assigned them, it was like
Let's all come back together. So we've done all parts of the mini lesson now. You've created your own. Good job. And we've heard some great conversations about how this is really hard, but it's been really good because it helps you understand the components of the mini lesson. Anybody want to share out some aha moments they've had? Somebody say something. No? Okay.
I definitely think that's true that now as I'm going back and I can go back and look at Lucy's mini lessons that I'm going to know, oh, this is why she's saying these things in this order. So now I understand more of what's going on in her mind as she wrote those mini lessons.
Okay. Erin said that when she goes back and looks at the mini lessons, she has a clearer understanding of why she wrote what she wrote and what's happening in those mini lessons. And that, thank you for saying that because that was part of my plan for today. I think when you tear something apart and put it back together and struggle with that, it really helps you understand that. And remember, this year, what are we trying to work hardest on getting good at is the mini lesson. That's our focus. We've introduced other things to you like small group instruction, or not small group instruction, one-to-one conferring. And we want you to try that, but what we're focusing on getting good at this year is the mini lesson. And it seems simple, but it's very, very important. What I want you to do now is I want you to find a friend who teaches the same grade level at your partner school. So you'll be in partners. Pick up that laptop, move across the room if you have to, and I want you to share what you have written. I want you to share your mini lesson with that teacher friend from your partner school. Those of you at satellite schools, if you're not finished yet, I've got some feedback that some people weren't finishing. That's okay. Share what you have. We're going to take 5 minutes, maybe not even 5, maybe 3. 3 minutes. I want you to get up. I want you to go find a friend, share what you have, do that, and then take a break, and we will resume at 10:30. Okay, so everybody get up, move around, share.
Want to be my friend? Okay. Yes.
always comes in with a smile. She questions you.
Yes, that's exactly like we use this like
was like planning today, we were thinking about our evidence or
went through and said, we connected
Okay, if you could all find Some great things going on in this room, and I'm sure at our satellite schools as well. I hope you've all shared what you did with me, and I'll try to get that I say I, but I'll probably have Megan do it, in a folder and share that out in the Google Classroom so you have a little bank of mini lessons, extra lessons if you need them. Remember, our purpose for doing this work that we did this morning was if we feel like the majority of our kids were not getting the concept skills or strategies we taught, we can tuck in an extra mini lesson or two to help with that. If we want to keep the same teaching point and write new teaching, demonstration, engagement, and connection, we can do that, or we may write a brand new teaching point. Remembering we're always going to keep the structure of the workshop. We are not going to go use other kinds of curriculum to bolster our student learning. We're going to use this method. Okay, so that was our purpose for this morning. And it was just toe-tapping fun, wasn't it? Okay. The next thing we are going to talk about, we have a new topic, switch topics, is characteristics of text levels. Pushing, dragging, and lifting those kids up the ladder of text complexity. This is very important knowledge for you to have as you coach our students to become better readers. The reason to think and talk about text complexity is that this knowledge will inform your teaching. And your main resources for this are Chapter 4 in Reading Pathways and Chapter 5 in Reading Pathways. And I need to give a correction. Earlier I said mini lessons, look at chapter, I said 7, but really it was wrong. That's in the primary edition. In the intermediate edition, you need to look at Chapter 5 for the mini lesson. Okay, for text complexity, this is from the Pathways book. Chapter 4 is about fiction. Chapter 5 is about nonfiction. So, knowing the level of and the work of a text band allows the teacher to do a few things. It allows you to move the reader into a new band. It allows you to provide appropriate book introductions during guided reading, to provide appropriate strategy lessons, and keep an eye on the reader's progress by paying attention to their abilities to do new work required in their specific band of text. And it also helps you determine if small group lessons are supporting the skills that your readers are expected to use. So there's a lot of good stuff from knowing the work of the bands. When you draw your chair alongside a reader and say, how's it going? Because if you know the text bands, you'll have a hunch about the challenges that reader is facing and what you can do to scaffold them or push them or help them or lift them up by their hair into the next level. Now, does that mean that we expect by the end of next week everybody should have all the text band work memorized? No. You have a cheat sheet. Probably in a few years you will know that stuff well, but nobody is expecting you to memorize that stuff. That's why we have stuff on paper. Okay? So, and remember, what's our main focus this year? A good mini lesson. We're adding this stuff in to help you to start working on this other stuff, but we don't expect you to master this. So, talking about bands of text bands, you're all familiar with this. Each of these bands has similar work that students do in that band. that is why when we find a student's level, say I assessed a student and I've determined that that student is reading at a level K. That student can pick books from J, K, L, M because all those levels have about the same kind of work. And I hope that no one is telling a kid, you can only read a level K book because that's your level. That should not be happening. That's why we have bands. We met with librarians, was that last week we met? And we talked about letting kids choose a book in the library that is in their band, and then letting them have a free choice book. But you need to be cautious with that. And I'll tell you what happened. I was teaching a lesson, and the kids had just come back from the library before I taught the lesson. And they had been allowed to choose any book that they wanted to pick. So I taught the lesson, and then they were doing their independent reading, and I was going around and conferring with individual students. And right away, I realized these kids cannot do the work of the lesson I just presented because they had books that were too hard for them. They had all just picked books because their friends were picking them. There wasn't any guidance on that. So they weren't able to do the work that I asked them to do. And so pretty much I just wasted some valuable instructional time. So you need to find that fine balance between having them read in their band, but also letting them have some free choice. And it may be, I think at Shaw they use the term worthy book. So after I teach my mini lesson, today, boys and girls, you'll need to get out your worthy book to do this work that we've been talking about. Okay, and you guys are artful and masterful. You'll figure out that balance between letting them read whatever book they want, but also keeping in that band so that they can do the work. A lot of you have kids who are reading at an A-B level, even in 5th grade. Okay, let's talk about that A-B level. Students only stay in the level A-B until they develop CAP skills. And for upper grade teachers, CAP skills may not be a familiar term. It stands for Concepts About Print. So this is a brief synopsis of what Concepts About Print are. So when your kids know the difference between the front of the book, the back of the book, or opening, how to open to the first page, when they know that there's a difference between pictures and print, when you give them the text, they can find the first word, they know where to start, they know how you sweep across text, they know how to go on to the next line, they know that they can say this is a letter, this is a word, this is the first letter, this is the last letter. They can kind of follow along with their finger when the teacher's reading or follow their teacher's finger. And they can identify some punctuation. Those are all concepts about print. As soon as a kid can do all these things in their A-B book, you're going to get them out of that A-B book even though they can't read all the words in the A-B book. They only stay in the A-B book until they have concepts about print. We don't want kids practicing to read with A-B books. They're, I see the dog. I see the sink. They're never going to get meaning from that. We don't want to leave them there. Once they have concepts of print, you get them out. But I know all of you are saying, but they can't read the CD books. What are we going to do? There's lots of things you can do with them. If you have a book that you've been reading over and over again, they can go in a basket as familiar text. They can listen to books on audio and follow along, although you don't want that to be a scaffold that you use all the time. That's not your go. That's once in a while. They can partner read with a EF person. If you have some extra help in your classroom, that's the first person they go to. They read that text together. maybe several times. Maybe that's the kid I make a beeline to and read that book with them together, and then it becomes a familiar read that they can work with. But don't leave them in those A-B books if they already have concepts about print. Okay? Oh, I flashed ahead before I finished. Okay. A through K are more easily described by their individual levels. Like I can say a C book has this, a D book has this, etc. J and above, it's more valid to describe in the bands. Okay, so that should help you a little bit. So that's why C and D are in a band all by themselves. Okay, now here's a caution. J, K, L, and M are all together in a band. But there is a huge jump from a J book to a K book. And I know a lot of you in upper grades say, I still have kids in J books. And I don't know how to get them out of there. In a J book, for the most part, remember these are generalizations, so I'm sure you can find some book somewhere that doesn't match these generalizations. In a J book, for the most part, each chapter stands alone. I could pick out, and it's very episodic. Here's a chapter. I could read this chapter from beginning to end, and it's a nice little story. It could be a short story all by itself. Starting in your K level, they have to hold an idea across chapters. So the problem spans. They can't just open up to chapter 4 and read and know what's happening. So if you have kids who are stuck in J, that's what you're going to coach them on. How a reader holds on to parts of the story as they move through the chapters. That's where knowing the characteristics of these bands is powerful, because now you know what to coach students on. They're in a level, and it seems like they're in a level forever. Start thinking about the characteristics of that level and what you can be coaching them through to move them to the next level. Is everybody with me? I think that knowing these is powerful. And many teachers have said, I don't know what to coach I don't even know what to say when I get on one-to-one conferring. Well, if I plan ahead the day before, I'm going to meet with so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so, and I know this kid's an R, this kid's a J, I have some things I can draw on, these text bands that I could coach them through. Okay, often kids are reading their level N through V books. They get up to that level N, but they're reading them like J through M books, just kind of plowing through. They know how to determine a main idea and a solution. They know how to say what the character traits are. But they're not shifting their thinking work to accommodate the deeper thinking of the higher band. I've got Number the Stars up here that I'm going to share with you in just a minute. You could read this as a level U reader and enjoy the story and think it's great and think this is a great story about the Nazi occupation of Copenhagen. That's not what this story's about. That's the backdrop. This story is about growing up, coming of age. The Nazi occupation just gives a framework for that. So we have a lot of kids that we assess them and they move up in those levels really fast. I mean, we're wondering why they're not doing well on state assessments or why they're not doing well on math, because they're a level U reader. But they haven't been taught the deep thinking of that level. The kids are plot junkies. They know the plot, they can retell the plot to you, but they can't do the deeper thinking of that level. So that's something for us to think about as teachers as we have kids move up those bands. Many of you have started using the Bass 3rd edition. Lee, what do you all use? Bass 2nd or 3rd? Second. What do you guys use? Second. The 2nd. When we start migrating to the 3rd edition, our levels will drop because the comprehension component of that is so good. It's so detailed. And even moving from DRA to BASS, I'm sure schools that have moved there notice the DRA comprehension questions are the same no matter what level text they're using. But the BASS, the comprehension questions, are specific to that level because the bands all have different work that is required of readers. So that scoring the comprehension part of the BASS assessments is really, really important to get a true picture of our kids and what band they're in. So one way to get started with students doing the deep thinking of a higher band is to identify an anchor text for each band. So you use the lens of the band to annotate, mine the text for teaching points you know will come up over and over again in the band. This becomes your demo text, and so this is my demo text. I know this is a U, and I know in what is it? RSC, in UVW books, there's often symbolism. So I made a little note to myself here, symbolism, and I gave some examples in the book. The backstory is there's always a backstory, but it's not like a defined flashback or flash forward. It's a slow process. The author kind of drops hints along the way about things that have been happening. Characters in contrast. So for example, in this book, there's a little girl, Kirsty or Christy, I can't remember. You guys can't hear me?
You're good. You're good.
Okay, I'm good. Do I need to talk louder?
No,
Okay, sorry. So there's characters in contrast a lot of time. Little girl Christy, she's innocent young. She doesn't really understand about the occupation. Anne-Marie is older. She's starting to understand some things. She's figuring out things about adults, and they're kind of a contrast to each other. So I know those things about this band, and I know I've got kids reading this band. I have my book club reading this book, maybe. And so I know what the demands of the band are for that book club. So I've created a little lesson on backstory that I've put in here. Okay, and here's my lesson on backstory. Sometimes, as the author is telling a story, he or she slowly lets us know there is something more happening. Often, that something more becomes more and more important as we read on. Okay, so I'm going to share a little bit of this text. I know you guys read some of this yesterday, but let's listen to this and see if we can hear some backstory that's slowly being revealed to us. Go, shouted Anne-Marie, and the two girls were off, racing along the residential sidewalk. Anne-Marie's silvery blonde hair flew behind her, and Ellen's dark pigtails bounced against her shoulders. Wait for me, wailed little Christy, left behind. But the two older girls weren't listening. Anne-Marie outdistanced her friend quickly, even though one of her shoes came untied as she sped along the street called Osterbrogade, past the small shops and cafes of her neighborhood here in northeast Copenhagen. Laughing, she skirted an elderly lady in black who carried a shopping bag made of string. A young woman pushing a baby in a carriage moved aside to make way. The corner was just ahead. Anne-Marie looked up, panting, just as she reached the corner. Her laughter stopped. Her heart seemed to skip a beat. Halt, the soldier ordered in a stern voice. The German word was familiar as it was frightening. Anne-Marie had heard it often enough before, but it had never been directed at her until now. Behind her, Ellen also slowed and stopped. Far back, little Kirsty was plodding along, her face in a pout because the girls hadn't waited for her. Anne-Marie stared up. There were two of them. That meant two helmets, two sets of cold eyes glaring at her, and four tall, shiny boots planted firmly on the sidewalk, blocking her path to home. And it meant two rifles, gripped in the hands of the soldiers. She stared at the rifles first. Then finally, she looked into the face of the soldier who had ordered her to halt. "Why are you running?" the harsh voice asked. His Danish was very poor. 3 years, Amory thought with contempt. 3 years they've been in our country, and still they can't speak our language. So I'm going to, in my little group, I'm going to talk to my kids, and we're going to talk about how this story with these little girls were just playing and running and having fun, but we're starting, the author is dropping clues that something is not as it seems because there's soldiers in their town. Okay, and then I might give them another little example. Of course, it wasn't really coffee, though the mothers still called it that. Having coffee. There was no real coffee in Copenhagen since the beginning of the Nazi occupation. So as a reader, I'm reading this story about these girls running and playing and having a good time, and then there's these little hints that something isn't right. Why are there soldiers in this town? So that's my little lesson on backstory. A lot of level U readers would plow right through that and not even notice this. So what I'm trying to get them to do is notice this and start thinking as they're reading. So that's how I'm coaching these kids with the demo text. And I put samples of this. And then I'm going to keep this forever. Like the first couple of years, it's hard to get these things, but I'm going to have this forever, and it will become easier for me. Oh, I remember that. Oh, she's struggling with that. Okay, and get your demo text. This also works really well with book clubs. If you have a book club and most of the kids are going to be in the same band in their book club, you should know the characteristics of that band so you can help them and coach them. And that book club becomes your small groups. Okay, there are a ton of resources for this, okay? And we've got 5 minutes till we go to lunch. What I want you to do is just spend the next 5 minutes going through these resources and seeing what's there for you. Because we are not going to spend time memorizing the bands, but there are resources for you to know about the band. So take the next 5 minutes. I want you to look at every single one of these resources, talk to them with your neighbor, and when you're finished, go ahead and go to lunch, and we will see you back here at 12:15 sharp. Any questions? Okay, good to go. If you could finish up your conversation, we'll get back to this great work on text bands. Okay, everybody's attention back. Okay. All right, we're gonna go. Hopefully, we're ahead of schedule right now, so I'm hoping I can get you more planning time. So one of the questions. Oh, I'm supposed to talk about the bathrooms. Bathrooms. Men go to room 100. Go to the bathroom. Women go to the men's. They're always messed up here. Okay, or just don't go. Okay, drawing time. Drawing time. Who's the lucky winner? Ashley Kaznika. It's not much, but it's what our budget could afford. Okay. Before we left for lunch, we were talking about the bands of text and the complexity of each band and the characteristics. And we had a really great question. So a teacher asked, okay, my kid is an M. Should they only be reading this level? They should be sticking to that band to read, but if they're at the higher end of the band, you're looking at the next level of band to see what you can do to coach them up out of this band. Okay, so the next band is going to give you information on what you can coach that kid. If they're at the lower end of the band, you're going to be making sure they can do all the thinking work of this band. Kids, your lower readers, your A through K, will go through bands fairly quickly. Your higher level, maybe it will take them a whole unit to get through a band, maybe 30 or 40 books to get through a band. But it kind of depends on the kid. The important thing is to not let them move through bands without doing the deep thinking of the band they're in. And someone else had a really good question, and I can't remember what. Somebody said, this is overwhelming to me, this list. This is where I start getting overwhelmed. Nobody's saying you have to use anything in this list or everything in this list, okay? We just tried to put as many things in there so you have a choice. Maybe you like the way the bands are laid out in this one. Maybe you like the way they're laid out in this. Okay, this one we tried to give more information in. Here's some sentence frames. You just go, that's why I wanted to give you time to look through those. Find what works for you and use it. But nobody's saying you have to use all this. These are resources for you. Okay, so I don't want you to get overwhelmed about that. Are we good on that? Okay. So we did that. We did this. So this is what I want you to do now. I want you to think of a band that the majority of your class is currently reading in. Or think of a particular student that you are concerned about. I want you to use one of those resources to read the characteristics of their band. Then I want you to make a little list of specific work you might do to coach a student up that level, either up to the next level in that band or up to another band. Okay? As soon as you have a list of 3 or 4 things, I want you to find a friend from a partner school at your grade level. So you're going to have to move around, and I want you to share your list. Okay? Any questions about the work that you're going to do? Either think of the majority of your kids in their band or a specific kid you're worried about, and read that band and get to know that band, and then think of a list you could do that you could coach them through. Okay, we will take 5 minutes to do this. I think we can do this in 5, maybe 10. Let's come back at 12:30. Okay? 12:30.
Make a list of what a list of ideas that we can do to help them through.
We talked about it for the rest of the time. This is what I did this week.
Okay.
It just is amazing.
You do a lot, Is there, so that's your, you chunk in one spot, or they all in the different bands?
So we need to be able to understand.
Even then target instruction. It's harder. Actually, it's constantly different. It's harder.
Do you have it in your phone?
Well, you've got to go and read it. So we're readers. Yes.
That's all of the language.
So he could read it out.
So then you word it into something when you return.
Well, and there,
Yes, I saw that on this one.
Up here, focus on here.
Actually, what I put in that
Okay, so we need to work on reading their short bus.
Yeah, obviously, it's really good.
But synthesize.
This will
I'm sorry, synthesizing?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking last night.
As far as the biggest issue.
Because I was, when I pick it up, I'm like, oh wait, you can't. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, and I was also looking at about how it's tricky with words, so they've got a lot more words than the regular words that they can't sound out clearly.
So we want help tracing, say,
I think part of that, but I also think using context clues is really, really important.
third graders are doing it.
That was also my
But I also
soapbox was context.
reading bad characteristics. Second of breaking down words in the original text.
How they need to think about what they already know about something.
Well, and they need to make connections.
That's what I mean. Like, at first I was thinking this, but as I was reading, I was thinking this, and then at the end I was thinking this. Because that lets them
Yeah.
in the end,
yeah, but he is.
yeah, I think it helps too that we have to practice with it. Yes. I'm better understanding the layout in a broader sense, but not so much with characters. I get to start working about yes.
Figuring out why I think
Okay, so anything else? I think maybe to reiterate that you have to hold on to the previous part of the story, you know, remembering what
That's what it
happened.
says on here, that it's thinking about.
Well, so like we were saying, hey, you have
Hold an idea in each chapter.
Takeaway I'm getting from it too is when it's talking about character traits that become more implicit through this band. You know, you don't get the. It's still restated a lot in
The
this band,
character
but
traits are also based on what they're saying or doing, like their actions.
rather than explicitly saying Amber Brown was cranky.
Yes, yeah, it's based on their, and the dialogue, showing is the talent, like what we do, right? Show our feelings, show our frustrations.
I think another
Thank you about sharing your partners from another
I don't know how my
Not even I. So you probably want to grab John's friend from your partner school.
like how to understand words we don't know.
Yes, I mean, because that's what they're doing in third grade now, as part of the unit, because that's not what
And the fourth graders can really benefit from making sure that you get this.
use your pupil analogy to where they're dancing and wants to do it. Hand comes up to them, so like, goes around them.
Come on, guys. Come on. Find a partner friend.
What strategies does he use?
Okay, we'll let you guys you'll have to share
Over here. Oh, sorry.
Hey, sorry, I've got chocolate chip cookie on my paper.
We all wrote it. We all wrote it on there.
Oh, you're all doing together. Okay, we just done. They said work on synthesizing and making predictions. That's what I was thinking as I was reading our we're talking about figuring out what's in the remember what happened?
Like the dialogue and how it's timed, so making sure they know which characters are saying what, and like keeping up with that. That kind of goes with the whole keeping up with the idea, like keeping up with who's saying what, so they know that. It's just something else.
But you're reading it out loud, and I was like, oh wait, we're supposed to use the like I you try to read ahead and say, right, saying the same, and so I was trying to do the voice again. One time I was saying it, I was like, oh, that's
This is a really great story. Really
They're really good.
You guys are like this. If you ever wanted to do cross school, this is like great.
I think we would like that. Here's writing, here's math.
Well, and also when you talk about dialogue, yes, it's very language is writing. Writing was the first
I'm actually kind of giving a hint when you're reading. This is a different person.
I think it was probably
They probably are. Students are
That's pretty much the same thing. So you're on comprehension and all the extra things.
Like I saw, I don't talk about like the concept thing, so I wish I shared that and all that. See,
Okay, let's all get back to our seat.
thank you.
Okay. Any ahas anybody wants to share out? Anything that stuck to you? Let me get the mic, Ashley. No, it's okay. it ready? Okay, ahas about text levels. Some eye-opening thoughts? It's okay.
We were just saying that these are things that we do intuitively, that it's nice to have a bunch of lists to look at and be able to pinpoint what we want to do with our kids.
Okay.
Because we don't necessarily notice that we're doing those things as we read and know those things about certain levels of books. So
Great. Anybody else want to share something they noticed? I heard a lot of talk about coaching up, looking at the next level to know how to move our kids. That's good. That's good stuff. Okay. This looks like a big giant. Thank you. Okay, next task. Okay, now we've been talking about fiction. So now we want to talk about nonfiction. And the TC view is that with so many textual, structural, and content differences between texts, coming up with characteristics of bands of text complexity seem problematic with nonfiction. So it's hard, we can't take nonfiction books like a JKL and say they all share these characteristics. We can use the levels for leveling, but not necessarily for coaching our students. Do you see the difference? We're going to level our nonfiction books with the F&P levels, but it's pretty hard to say all level L nonfiction share these characteristics. So instead of talking about bands, we talk about strands, just to make it more confusing for you. Another thing you have to learn. Woohoo. Okay, we're going to talk about strands. And these are the ways that nonfiction books can be difficult. The explicitness and the complexity of the meaning, the central idea, the author's purpose can determine whether a nonfiction book is accessible or not to a student. The language and vocabulary, the structure, that compare, contrast, problem solution, or features, and then the knowledge demands. We've all had a kid who loved snakes, and they would read anything on snakes, and they'd get big fat books that you thought they can't read that book, but they would read it because they know everything about snakes. So, what challenges do readers face as nonfiction texts increase in difficulty? If you would click on this and just take a minute to review this, we've tried to compile the ways that each of those strands, like what the easier books within that strand might look like and the harder books. So just take a minute to review this and orient yourself to this text. Okay, I know you had no way to finish that, but I just want you to get a little preview of that for our next activity. Satellite schools, the librarian at your school should have pulled some nonfiction books for you. They should be available to you. This group, there's a table over here with nonfiction books. Some of them are leveled, some of them are not. I want you to choose a nonfiction book either from this table or from your mentor text in your kit. I want you to make a copy of the form that's linked in here and use the book you've selected to complete this form. Now, you can do this with a partner if you want, and I'm going to give you let's say 5 minutes to do this, and then I'll stop and I'm going to want you to share with a partner friend again. Okay, so this is the form you're going to use. Okay, so what you'll want to do is look at each strand with the book you chose. What strengths will this student bring to each of these strands as they read this book? So if you have a J kid and you pick it and your book is J, what strengths do you think, and you might have a kid in mind as you do this, okay? And what will be a teaching point for this student in each of these strands? So get a kid in mind. Get a kid in mind. Or a group of kids in your class. Pick a book and then look at each strand and decide what strengths and weaknesses. Am I clear? Okay, there's books over here. We're going to take 5 minutes. We probably won't finish in 5 minutes, but I just want you to get the flavor of this.
Oh, you did? Yes.
Oh, wait, that's the main.
And use that text.
Yeah, she shared it. It's called Refresh.
Yeah, Holly Johnson.
Yeah, they love karate.
Yeah, there we go.
So it's high interest.
Okay, so high interest.
It has a lot of pictures.
It's a lower level, like a 10K.
So it's more our kids to be able to lots of photographs
To help you figure out the meaning of the complexity.
So it says like easier text, where you know it gets down to part of it, it's kind of in the middle, right? And now,
although this might come out to recess and then I
They're just, I'm just that.
this far, that would be awesome. If somebody said that, I'd be like, high five. Give me some knuckle bumps. Cannot spar at school.
High interest, lots of real photographs.
use that vocabulary to describe it.
I mean, that would be amazing. This book.
Yeah, doesn't say necessarily.
Now when it says the teaching point for this student, the other side, are we doing that too?
Yeah, there is folded words. Yeah, table of contents. Yeah, text and teaching.
Oh, for language vocabulary, important words are the words that makes it easy.
And it actually has a glossary.
Okay. Oh, and then down on structure, it says text
Fold words, table of contents.
Are there label, are there have to graph? Or not?
Well, it talks about telling, describing chart. It is a diagram, it's like a label picture. Diagram.
You're so glad.
And there are captions for pictures.
Yes.
I noticed the kids kind of being like,
They asked me to turn on the timer, but I never.
Got an index too.
Alright, so then down on the bottom where it says
Knowledge demand, you'd have to know that that was me. GI, teacher.
They would need to be able to know to reference that lost
I think they would have to have prior knowledge in karate to know maybe.
I don't know, some of our kids will be able to find that. I don't think you can because they
So, I think
Then the prior knowledge.
I was gonna say, I know my husband's got to teach karate now. I don't know what grade. I know
So what are our knowledge demands?
I don't know. Back to
You have to, yeah, maybe a familiar base features, well, you know, when kids who don't really know structures, time to line up.
Right, because that's a heading.
Oh, it totally, I totally put that in there. I put engaging headings as one of the explicit. Okay.
Okay, I know you're not anywhere near finished with this, but I wanted to give you a flavor of what you're going to need to do as you move into these nonfiction units in Unit 2 on making these texts accessible, okay? Find a partner friend from your partner school and just share some of your thoughts or some of the work you just did. Okay, let's quickly do that, like 1 minute.
Where'd it go? There it is.
coming to our middle part again.
We did it all together.
We did too. Okay, great.
Like y'all probably.
So, we had the past about dental, and so we kind of talked about how it's our kids and for talked about how they were strength but they know
lower level text, something will define words like ecosystem right within the confines of the text. Whereas a strength could be that things like this, it's going to assume background knowledge that you know that the deep is an ecosystem, right? Or that you know what an ecosystem is. Or the lower level text,
we're thinking that they'll be able to like locate the tricky words, but then we're going to teach them how to use the glossary in the back to know what those words mean. And then we were thinking for structure, we'll be teaching about like the text features and how that can help.
well, I think that was a hard, it's like, it was harder because we had the top tier of the test.
We didn't get to this part. This is hard. We stuck with this color. Yeah, oh, sorry.
Let's reconvene. Let's reconvene. Sorry, you guys didn't have very much time, but. Nonfiction is hard to level. It's hard to decide how students are going to access these texts. We're doing great on time. So as you move into Unit 2 with all this nonfiction, anticipate that maybe your kid's reading level might drop a notch for nonfiction, and that's okay. That's all right. And Lucy says it is perfectly fine to get a fiction level and say that's close enough for nonfiction. It's perfectly fine to do that. Just be aware that you'll have that little drop because they're reading nonfiction, and don't panic about it. And knowing the ways that nonfiction can be hard will help you, will give you some ideas on what to coach these kids through. So we have made excellent time, you guys, so I'm going to be able to give you some more planning time. Awesome. So we just have a few parameters. Please use this time for reading units of study, planning. If you haven't already done so, please think about unpacking Unit 2. How many have already unpacked Unit 2? Anybody? So you might want to think about going to Unit 2 and unpacking it. And we linked in a little unpacking tool that you may choose to use or not use. The one thing I really like about this, even if you don't use this, it might be helpful to think and write somewhere and give it to the most responsible person on your team to save some reflections about Unit 1. What books or supplies will you need more of for next year? So when your principal comes to you at the end of the year and says, I've got money to spend, what should I spend it on? You've got some ideas already there. What ahas did you have as you launched Unit 1 about structures and routines, the mini lessons, the flow of the workshop that you want to carry forward? And what skills or work from Unit 1 that your students did will carry over into Unit 2? Okay, and then there's just different categories of things to look at. You don't have to use that. This is just something we thought might be helpful. So we are now in planning time. Woohoo! Yay! I know you guys need this desperately. I hope you're not overwhelmed. Remember, what's our focus this year? We're going to get good at the mini lesson. We're learning new things and we're trying them out. We will fail at them. There'll be some epic fails, and that's okay. That's what you're going to learn from. So just think, they're not going to leave dumber than they came. Just hold on to that thought. And keep doing the good work that you're doing. Thank you so much for the positive energy in the room after a long week. I really, really appreciate that. And enjoy your planning time. And don't forget to email us or call if you need help. We're here to help you. And so it's up to your principal whether they want you to remain at the site you're at for planning time or if you may return to your school. So you'll look to your admin for that. Okay? Anybody have anything want to say? Anything to say? Okay, on this site, everybody's staying, which is kind of good because I can help you if you need help. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you, live stream people. If you need help, we're going to close down the chat, but you can, well, yeah, we'll close it down. You can go ahead and email me, and I'll keep a close eye on that, or call and let me know if you have any questions. Okay, happy planning. And we're done. We might want to shut the door so you don't
You mean like cheese wrap? I'm not drinking any.
So